morning, everybody. My name is Hetherington, and I have the awesome privilege of being the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank. I'm proud and grateful to be joined by incredible volunteers, agencies, and our board of directors here today to speak about some very difficult news. This past month, March of 2023, the Daily Bread Food Bank saw 270,000 client visits. That is the most ever recorded in our history. And for context, let me tell you where we were before the pandemic. We saw about 65,000 clients every single month, and then the pandemic hit us, and we saw some 120,000. Subsequently, with inflation, that number has more than doubled, 270,000 client visits. In addition, we are now seeing 12,500 new clients coming to us every single month for the first time. They have never been to a food bank before, and now they are relying on food charity to be able to feed their families. Let me be very clear. We are in a crisis. The Daily Bread Food Bank and food banks all across the city are at a breaking point, and there is no sign of relief. In fact, the opposite. With record high rates of inflation, rising rents, and stagnant incomes, Torontonians are struggling more and more to put food on their tables. While the Daily Bread Food Bank continues to be there for them, the need in our city is continuing at an unsustainable rate of exponential growth. We continue to see a large proportion of clients who rely on fixed incomes, such as social assistance, accessing our food banks now. A single individual on Ontario Works receives a dismal $733 a month to survive on, the exact same amount as in 2018. Despite inflation having risen by 16.6%. A single individual on disability is receiving $1,229 per month to survive on, some $900 below the poverty line. We continue, for some reason, to legislate that the most vulnerable in our province remain in poverty. We're also seeing more and more employed individuals coming to food banks. The proportion of food bank clients with full-time employment as their primary source of income has doubled in the past year alone, from some 16% pre-pandemic to 33% this past year. It used to be that if you went to school, got an education, got a job, you would be just fine. That isn't the case anymore. The Daily Bread Food Bank are expecting these trends to continue. Statistic Canada released just recently in April 2022, noting that 1 in 5 Canadians feel that they will likely have to rely on charity to be able to make ends meet moving forward. We simply cannot go on the way things are going right now. At this time, I'd like to introduce Debbie Atkinson, the co-founder and board chair of the Fort York Food Bank, to share a few words about what they are seeing on the ground at the food bank.
Thank you, Neil and Daily Bread, for inviting me to speak on what I see from the ground. The Fort York Food Bank is a small storefront located downtown Toronto. And what I see today is a fragile system that is at breaking point. If you visited the Fort York Food Bank on any given morning, what you would see is a long lineup of folks waiting for the food bank to open. What we saw and experienced in March is something I have never experienced in my 25 years as a food bank. 3,000 folks coming once a week, coming each week to the food bank. The highest number of first-time food bank users. For a small organization like us, over 100 new individuals and new families is huge. For the first time, the number of children coming to food banks has increased. It used to be 1 of every 7 was a child. Now we see 1 of every 4 is now a child. The face of food bank users are changing. Who are we seeing at the food bank? We're seeing a number of the working poor. We're seeing families and moms who are going without. We're seeing children going without at the doors of the Fort York Food Bank. When we set this place up 25 years ago, we didn't even imagine that we would be here today with lineups. In a prosperous city, this is not something that we should be experiencing. The only thing that helps us keep optimistic and hopeful is the support of the Daily Bread Network and the fellow member agencies that are here with us today. So thank you again for being here today, and back to you, Neil.
Good morning. My name is Lee Soda, and I am one of the network member agencies in Scarborough with Agents for Community Services. This morning I stand before you, sharing the words and the worries of some of the good people of our city who access the food bank in Scarborough. Accessing the food bank gives me some peace of mind. I'm very sick, and my mom's health is failing too, and all her medications are not covered. We have to pay. We rarely eat 3 meals a day because we can't afford it. I don't know what we'd do if we didn't have access to the food bank. I come to the food bank with my husband. We can't make ends meet. We both have jobs, but we earn barely enough to pay the rent and utilities. It's hard not to feel depressed and anxious about our future when we already work so hard for our little family. Of course I skip meals in order for my child to eat. Sometimes I don't have lunch. I don't have food at lunch. My friends are kind and they share with me, but they ask me, why don't you have food? My mommy and daddy say it's because there's no food in the cupboard. These are not my words, but the words of those walking in through our door every day in order to access food. In October of 2022, our food bank had 15,623 visits. 6 months later, in March of 2023, the numbers have skyrocketed to 21,475, an increase of nearly 5,900 additional visits. Each of the visits, a man, a woman, a worried parent, a struggling senior, a scared newcomer, or helpless child, each of them has a story. And for the dedicated staff and volunteers who work tirelessly every day to serve each of these statistics you hear today, each one has a name. A crisis is defined as an unstable or crucial time or state of affairs in which decisive change is impending, a situation that's reached a critical phase. This is it, here today. We are in a crisis. Food banks are not the solution to solving hunger or food insecurity. It is the government's duty to ensure that everyone in our city has a right to food. As an anchor agency, member agency of Daily Bread, we share today's message of urgency with every month that goes by, bringing thousands more people struggling with food insecurity through our doors. We are at a breaking point in our system and call on the provincial government to step up and take action. I turn it to Neil for final words.
Thank you very much, Debbie and Lee. As you've heard today, tens of thousands are in a crisis situation, and the food bank is in a crisis situation. Enough is enough. But we do have the promise of hope. We have the opportunity to be able to move forward positively. And for that, we are providing a demand of the provincial government. We are requesting, we are demanding, we are asking the province to come together and to provide the same emergency assistance that was provided to every single person on social assistance throughout the pandemic now. While food inflation is north of 10%, we need the Ontario government to come together and provide these payments immediately. We were pleased that the federal government provided GST credit or GST income to individuals entitled to that rebate. It's only half of what individuals will be paying who are currently experiencing food inflation. We know that the funds are there to make this happen. So Due to the federal, we know that through the Financial Office of Accountability, there was a underspent of the magnitude of $453 million on social assistance programs in the third quarter. These are funds that can and should be directed towards helping low-income Ontarians survive through this unprecedented crisis. Food insecurity is not a problem, as Lee said, that can be solved by charities. It's the government's duty to ensure that every person in this city is in a position that they can realize their right to food. So today, we are raising the alarm bells. We'll continue to do so. We will not stand silently while our neighbors go hungry. We can make the change in this city, province, and country so that everybody's right to food is realized. With that, we'll be happy to take some questions.
Neil, we get to this position. We live in a prosperous province, and based on your experience, and I've covered you for a long time now, what is the hesitation, do you think, of the government to step in and assist? How did we get here?
We got here because we decided that we were not going to make investments in affordable housing. We got here because we chose to legislate individuals to live in poverty through income supports that are abysmal, through disability and through OW. And we got here because right now precarious employment is rampant, and an individual who is working full-time still can't make ends meet. So that's how we got here. And we know the solution to get out, and we have provided each of those policy recommendations. Today, that demand that an emergency top-up to OW and ODSP be provided to them.
Neil, I've interviewed you progress in the last 3 years. Every time I've talked to you, things aren't worse, they're significantly worse. The numbers have gone up astronomically every single time I talk to you. Listen, you guys, like you said, aren't built to handle this kind of capacity. So what's the break like for the food bank in terms of how much longer can you guys handle this kind of rapid increase?
I have never been more proud of the team that I get to work with every single day. They have risen to the occasion. When I talked to you and it was 60,000, they rose to the occasion. When it was 120, they rose to the occasion. Now 270,000. But you are right. We are at a breaking point. We have ensured that we have the funds to carry on, but it's not at a sustainable rate. And over the course of some 18 to 24 months, the pandemic funds set aside by the Daily Bread Food Bank will be depleted.
Yeah, Neil, so the Ontario budget already came down. We were concerned, I guess, demand surplus to the government leading into the budget, and if it didn't happen in the budget, you haven't specified it would still happen.
So the answer is absolutely. For 40 years, we've been advocating, but most recently, we have been meeting with elected official after elected official with the same message, the same policy alternatives, and the same opportunity for hope. We made a budget submission. We have done everything that we can to make sure that the voices of those who are experiencing food insecurity is heard. And that message, we have an opportunity for that message to be acted on by the provincial government. We know that we can make changes in emergency situations between budgets. And we are giving the provincial government that opportunity, see the numbers, and walk back together from the limb that we collectively are on.
Just to follow up on my colleague's question there. So this is not new to the provincial government that you being food banks from the state that they're in. And is the message being heard when you talk to them, and what is the reaction when you hear something that what's the reaction?
I think that there is a general consensus across all levels of government and all party stripes. And that consensus is gratitude for the Daily Bread Food Bank and each of the food banks who are fulfilling the government's duty to ensure that everybody's right to food is realized. So there's gratitude on that front. We don't need gratitude or platitudes. What we need is action so that we can ensure that through government action, we don't need to provide the food for some 270,000 clients.
Can you give us a sense of how, cost of living, inflation, all of this, higher demand is impacting your day-to-day operating budget? I mean, the cost of food, as we all know, it is soaring. So, yeah, the impact of it is not as much.
Two parts to that. So the first is Daily Bread Food Bank used to spend $1.5 million on food per year. We're now spending $1.8 million per month on food. That is obviously a significant strain. We need to fundraise that amount of money. We do not receive government support, to be very clear. And the second is, as food prices go up, it means that there are more people who don't have that resiliency to be able to deal with the acute shock of food inflation. And that means that they're driven to the food bank. And our cost to provide food to each of those clients has risen exponentially. So we're hit on two fronts: more people in the line and more cost to serve that line.
If you just go back to what you said earlier about the 24 months, that if you have funding 18 to 24 months, what happens when that timeline runs out?
So earlier I mentioned that our board of directors set aside funds to ensure that through the crisis we would be able to manage. And the glide path on those reserve funds is clear. It is a glide path that results in an 18 to 24 month diminishment of those funds. So what happens after that? Well, three things have to happen. So we either need to raise more food or raise more funds, or much more importantly, much more hopeful, the number of client visits needs to diminish. And that's why we are calling this press conference. That's why we are asking the Ontario government to fulfill your obligations, and so that we can serve those in the city that still need emergency food relief.
So what happens if the demand increases, but the money supply doesn't, and you don't get this? What happens? That's what's the story.
Well, I think if that were to occur, then it will result in a diminishing amount of food for the clients, family coming to the food bank. Right now, when somebody lines up at a food bank, they receive about 3 days worth of food each week, which is not enough to begin with. But if we do not have the funds, that will be 2.5 days worth of food, 2 days worth of food, 1 day worth of food. And it is already a dismal amount that is provided, and we need to make sure that we never get down to that level of relying on the backs of food bank clients to be able to make that.
If you go back to something you said in your remarks, that is, I think some people have an idea of the type of client that you're facing now. People have full-time jobs, they're working full-time jobs. So just, can you just talk about the type of people that you see around because I think it's different than a lot of people's perception.
Yeah, it has been a clear trend over the past year that those whose primary source of income is employment are coming to food banks. And that promise of if you go out and get educated, you get the job that you are passionate about, that you'll be able to make ends meet. That's not the case in our city. And it is because we have chosen not to invest in affordable housing, and it is because we have chosen to support legislation that results in precarious employment.
Can you speak a little bit about anything that you'd be calling for from the public? Do you have a campaign to seek more from the government or a donation?
We are hopeful that every single viewer, that every single person who is hearing the message today through your outlets will take action. And they can take action by visiting our website and make the direct call to elected officials. And so that is the part that we are most hopeful for. It's not about food raising or fundraising at this press conference. It's about raising our collective voices to change the fundamental systems that have driven us to this point. It is individuals who are on fixed income, with a high proportion of individuals who are on ODSP. And again, I find it abhorrent that we legislate people, the most vulnerable, people who cannot work, to live in poverty at $900 below the poverty line. But again, it's a growing number of individuals who have done everything right and have got that position, that employment, and maybe they're cobbling together 2 jobs, and that means that they don't have benefits, but they're too wealthy to be able to get any government assistance when it comes to prescription medications or other necessities. And So they're making difficult choices between rent, food, between a bill, a utility bill, or just any of the basics. And so those are the choices that they are making. And as a result, food charity needs to step up to the occasion. We've done so, but it is at a point, at a crisis point, where we will be unable to continue on with 270,000 clients. Again, I think we're all finished on in terms of the questions, but I would like to end by my deep gratitude for each person standing here today. They have given their time as volunteers, as staff, to a mission that is fundamentally good, a mission that sees a city and a country where there is nobody who needs to rely on food charity to access their right to food. Thank you. Everybody.